evening. I am Pam Gardiol, the moderator for this evening's Ogden City Council Candidate Forum. I want to thank Amy Sue Mabey, the City Council's Communication Coordinator, for being tonight's timekeeper. This forum is to allow the citizens of Ogden the opportunity to hear the philosophies and positions of the candidates for the Ogden City Council positions that are open during this election cycle. In order to encourage full participation in the primary and general election processes by potential candidates, the City Council leadership has determined that write-in candidates will not participate in this City Council-sponsored forum. A media advisory has been issued by the Council regarding this policy. All candidates' comments will adhere to the Council's civility guidelines that were provided to each candidate and are available for all to view on the City Council's website at http:// council.ogdencity.com. Candidates are to answer the questions asked. If the responses are not related to the question, I will remind you of the question during your 2-minute response time. Questions for this evening's forum were provided from a cross-section of the community, current council members, and council candidates. Questions will be selected at random from the container holding all of the questions. Please remember to speak into the microphone so that your answers are clearly heard. All input from candidates will begin by the candidate at my left on the panel, and then we'll move to the candidate to that person's right for each ensuing question, to allow each candidate to speak first on the issue and last on the issue. The process for this evening is as follows. First, there will be a 1-minute introduction and opening statement by each candidate. Next, there will be a 2-minute response to the question that is asked. And then after all of the questions, there will be a 3-minute closing statement that will begin at approximately 8:05 so that we are able to finish by 8:30. Because we will be finishing by 8:30, we will not get through all of the questions, and that is why they will be at random. Let's begin. First, we will hear from Richard Hyer, running for Council Municipal Ward 2 seat, for his 1-minute introduction and opening statement. Mr. Hyer.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to gather with the other candidates for City Council and to be able to have our voices heard. I have lived in the city of Ogden my entire life, and most of that time was in Municipal Ward 2 up in the north part of town. I've been married to one wife that all of my married years, have several children, and have gone to Ogden City Schools. I'm very intimately acquainted with Ogden as a resident. I've been on the Planning Commission for about 15 years and have participated in all of the community plans and district plans since that time. Been to APA conferences, the American Planning Association, United States conferences in, I think, about 6 different cities over that period of time. And I appreciate the opportunity to run. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyer. Next, we will hear from Jennifer Neal, running for Council Municipal Ward 2 seat, for your 1-minute introduction and opening statement.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Neal, and I've lived in the city of Ogden since the age of 17 as first a poor college student, then married with one small child, and then for a while as a single parent once again married with another child that we're raising right now, and I've completed a bachelor's degree in economics and mathematics. It's a double major, minored in English, and I'm really pleased to make it through the primary election and have the opportunity to run for this office because I want to help my city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Next, we will hear from Caitlin Gochnour, running unopposed for the Council Municipal Ward 4 seat, for her introduction and 1-minute statement.
Thank you. Good evening. I have been an Ogden City Council member for the past 4 years. I believe I have the skills to continue finding sensible solutions for Ogden City. That's why I'm running for a second term. As a council member, I'll continue to represent Ogden's residents by thoroughly studying all sides of issues. I'm committed to listening, learning, and building on our city's momentum. Because I am running unopposed in the November election, I feel it is more important for citizens to hear from the other candidates during tonight's forum. There is much time and effort devoted to this event, and it is vital for voters to learn more about those for whom they must make a choice. Therefore, I will give these candidates the floor for the remainder of the evening. Best of luck to you all. Thank you for your support, and as always, please contact me with any questions or concerns. Good night.
Next, we will hear from Stephen Thompson, running for Council at Large Seat C, for your 1-minute introduction and opening statement.
Hi, I'm Stephen D. Thompson. I'm running for City Council at Large Seat C. I want to thank everybody that helped get me to this point. I very much appreciate the support of the voters. I've lived in Ogden my entire life, basically. I believe in Ogden City. I refer to Ogden frequently as O-Town. I think a lot of people do that. And I take it very personal when I hear somebody say that Ogden's not the place to live. I believe I can make a difference, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next, we will hear from Amy Wicks, running for Council at Large Seat C, for your 1-minute introduction and opening statement.
Thank you. I'm Amy Wicks. I currently hold the at-large seat C. I was born in Ogden. I actually live about 3 blocks away from where I was born. I work for the National Center on Shaken Baby Syndrome. It's a nonprofit organization. And it's been an honor and an incredibly wonderful and informative experience serving the diverse citizens of Ogden. In the time since I've been on the council, we've made the goings-on of city government more accessible. We've put things on TV. We put things on the website. I think we have more opportunities for people to be involved in, and that's a good thing in my mind. I'm excited to build on the momentum of all the projects going on right now to complete them. They're vital to our future. We've worked hard to get to the point where we are now with some of them, and I think it's important to have somebody with the knowledge and enthusiasm to complete those.
Thank you, Ms. Wicks. We will now commence the question portion of this forum. Mr. Hyer. All right, Mr. Hyer will respond. You have 2 minutes for your question response, and then Ms. Neal, it will be your turn to respond. Mr. Thompson, you will then respond, then Ms. Wicks. All right, Mr. Hyer, excuse me. Would you consider allowing Community Development Block Grant, CDBG funding, to be used to support local nonprofits?
That's a question that probably is difficult to answer in a hypothetical. The block grant money, I think, to best serve the community, should be used in a strategic way. Therefore, I'm certainly not opposed to using it for nonprofit if the nonprofit works into the strategy. I wish I could give you an example. There's much for me to learn on this topic, but as far as getting the most use or the most bang for the buck, as it were, each project should be looked at for its merit and how it fits in with the vision of how to best use that money. So as far as whether I'm opposed or in favor, it would be difficult to answer in a hypothetical, but I certainly don't see any real merit in keeping it limited to a specific segment. Certainly nonprofit would fit into those things, certainly some of the time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hyer. Ms. Neal.
Thank you. Local nonprofit organizations are already benefiting from the community block grants, such as the Ogden Housing Authority and Utah Nonprofit Housing Corporation. Funding nonprofit organizations are permitted on a conditional basis according to the HUD CDBG guidelines, and I will do my best as a councilwoman to make sure the guidelines are fiercely adhered to. I would consider only allowing additional CDBG funds to be used as specified in the grant guidelines issued by HUD, and that would best benefit the area targeted.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Neal. Mr. Thompson.
Nonprofits are the engine that drives volunteerism in our community and in our state. In the state of Utah, we have the greatest number of volunteers per capita of any state in the nation. I think if a nonprofit is community-based and oriented towards the citizenship within our community, then I would approve the use of block grants for them nonprofits.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Ms. Wicks.
Thank you. I suspect this would be something that would need more study. I think with the current economic climate and some of the things going on with the federal government, that the allocation of funding coming to us may be changing in the future, and status quo may not be something that we're going to be able to, have those funds. I would be open to looking at it if it was something that would benefit the community and that it would be the best use of those funds, especially if it was able to maybe draw in more funding for a project that they were able to complete through community partners. If it meant that it wasn't going to happen without those, I think that would be something worth looking at. But again, I think it would be on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Ms. Wicks. Next question. Ms. Neal, you'll begin. What skills do you bring to the council for consensus building among council members, city staff, and the community?
Well, in the past, I have had employment working with the federal government at the Internal Revenue Service, and there is a lot of teamwork that goes on there, and I played a part as I guess you would call it assistant manager, which would help bring the team together and make sure the work flowed, make sure everything got to where it needed to be, and communication lines were open in both directions, and working with different class groups during my university study really helped a lot because we had students. I went to Weber State, which is a non-traditional college or university, and so we had students from all backgrounds and age groups and family situations, and working as a team member in those areas has given me some experience. Plus, being a wife and mother, I think, has a lot to add to that, too.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Neal. Mr. Thompson.
I believe that this biggest skill that I would bring to the city council is the fact that I'm a huge consensus builder. I've worked for over a decade with different volunteer groups in leadership roles and managed to produce significantly for them volunteer groups. I think it's important to build consensus, though. That's my big thing. I really believe in the ability to listen to people, talk to people, and hear people out and make a decision that's based on the information that's presented to you. And I think that's a skill that in itself is an essential skill for a city councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Ms. Wicks.
Thank you. In the time that I've been on the council and when I was serving in a council leadership position, we had a situation where the city employees were on the verge of going on strike, and there really wasn't a whole lot of trust between the employees and administration, and it created a lot of difficulties for the city council too. So working with council staff, we were able to bring in an interest-based problem-solving work group format where everybody came in and worked with the facilitator to state their concerns and issues and work through those. And I think that was a good exercise in helping build consensus and move solutions forward. Working in the nonprofit world, you need community support for what you're doing. And if you want to do anything, you have to have your community and your supporters behind you and the people that would be impacted by that. So I have about 13 years experience working for a nonprofit organization that kind of has to work under those rules. I'm a good listener. I'm open to other people's ideas and do a lot of research on my own as well, and provide that information to other council members and administration as well. So I think I have some good skills in, getting the best information we have out there and making sure that we know that what we're doing is something that is going to be good for the community.
Thank you, Ms. Wicks. Mr. Hyer.
Yes, thank you. I have, I'm not sure if it's a unique skill, but it's been built over about 20 years in leadership positions of nonprofit groups. When you have volunteers, you've got a different set of problems than you do if you have paid people that are under your employ. In the Planning Commission, I've been the chair for 2 years and the vice chair for 3. And during that time, you oftentimes come up with a situation where you can't get a resolution to your petition. And I really kind of like that situation because it allows us to step in and find the things that we agree on. So we find the things that we can agree on and build upon it until we can come up with a solution. Oftentimes, someone is not happy. That's kind of the nature of those things. I also I like people. I enjoy speaking with people in the community. As I've been campaigning, I've enjoyed going around and talking to them, finding what their concerns are. And I think that I can bring those consensus-building skills, the ability to build on the things that we do agree on, to find a conclusion to the problem at hand, and I think those are the things that I can bring to bear for the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyer. All right, next question, Mr. Thompson. What would you do to increase tourism in our community?
I think probably the biggest thing to do is to increase tourism is to get people aware of what's going on in our area. And I think that should be done through some advertising programs, and the use of the social media is key nowadays. Everybody's using social medias. I think getting that involved and getting people to understand that Ogden has great things to offer. We have an excellent outdoor activities opportunity within reasonable distance of our community. We have excellent housing, temporary housing in the form of hotels and that sort of thing. And I think if folks were made aware, I think awareness is the big thing. We need to make people aware. The other thing is the real key to increasing tourism is leadership. We need good leadership from the mayor's office on down through to the city council so that we can promote the Ogden City concept and our outdoor recreation activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Ms. Wicks.
Thank you. I've actually served on the board of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and in that position I had the lucky volunteer position of taking people out who were visiting our community, and it's kind of neat to see Ogden through somebody else's eyes, to realize what we have here that we sometimes take for granted. We've made some huge strides in getting some national attention to our community, and we have 2 world-class ski resorts and a great historic downtown and a thriving art community and a lot of things that would draw people here. I think there's a great opportunity with the transit that's going from the airport to downtown with the light rail to make that connection from Front Runner. You could come to Ogden and have a great vacation and ditch the car. We've worked with the ski resorts to get transit up there during the winter, and I think that's a huge asset to our community as well. So I think building upon some of those things, getting maybe some places where people could rent bikes and outdoor gear is kind of a little problematic, and I think that's maybe one area where we're lacking a little bit. We do have some things that have kind of sprouted up as a result of that, but I think we could do a little bit more there. So I think just kind of continuing and building upon the momentum and the great attention we've received so far. It's great to travel and have people say, I read about Ogden, I know about Ogden, and I think that's become more and more common in the past couple of years with a lot of the things that have gone on.
Wicks. Mr. Hyer.
Yes, thank you. Lest I be very redundant, I appreciate what both Mr. Thompson and Ms. Wicks have said and agree with everything that was stated already. Advertising, I think, is key. We've got to use those mediums to make people aware of what great things are available here in our wonderful city. Continuing what we're doing is going to help. There are a lot of people that already are aware of what happens in Ogden, and they go home and they tell their friends and other relatives, and they continue to come. The thing that Ogden needs to do is to make sure that we appeal to all. We have a very diverse community, and so a diverse tourist would be very welcome here and feel right at home. One of the things I think that we can do that we need to investigate and to determine how we can exploit it better is we've got the neatest airport in the state of Utah, and it is very underutilized from a perspective of a vehicle to get tourists into our city. I remember several years ago I was out in Wendover, and they had a charter flight that came from somewhere in Southern California, and they used to come up every day, and they'd bring a bunch of people that would come into Wendover and spend money. Now, if Wendover can do that, Ogden has much more to offer than Wendover, Nevada. And I think with our great airport, we ought to be able to utilize that to bring tourists into this city, and we need to wait and find better ways to utilize that facility.
Mr. Hyer. Ms. Neal.
Yes, thank you. Tourism brings people to the city, of course, where they, first of all, add revenue and add to the tax base by spending in our local shops and hotels while they're in town without stressing out the services that are normally provided to the residents here. So that's a plus. and we're fast becoming an all-season tourist destination. I can see nothing but good things regarding tourism in Ogden for years to come. In addition, as Amy mentioned, the national recognition is increasing. I'm seeing that mentioned on, Facebook, the social networks, and in blogs and so forth, and I think that's a great thing. I think continuing to work with other entities, the Convention Bureau, as Ms. Wicks mentioned, and Chamber of Commerce, and even the local resorts, whose function it is to promote, invite, and recognize chances for new events and the activities that are already going on in our unique location in the way of recreation and participation. Ogden isn't just the city proper. She's the center for reaching many beautiful recreational opportunities for more than just her citizens, and the world outside our boundaries needs to know that.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Next question. Ms. Wicks. Describe how you will value, encourage, and enhance multiculturalism in Ogden. This is not limited to ethnicity.
We have a multicultural advisory committee. I don't know how really active they are, and I think it is somewhere where we could improve a lot. There's language barriers sometimes, and I think working with the schools and some other nonprofit entities to help people better function within our community as it exists is something that we need to support and help, so that people do feel welcome and more comfortable here, and it's easier for us to communicate. I think we have great diversity in incomes too, and I think maybe helping make sure that there are neighborhoods where there is a lot of diversity. East Central Ogden's a perfect example where you can have a thriving community where there are people from very diverse backgrounds. And I think working to help strengthen those neighborhoods and make them desirable for a wide range of people will help strengthen multicultural acceptance in our community. I think we need to work on some ways to do outreach. I'm not quite sure how you do that. There are some novel ways that we've been working with email and things like that to try to reach out to people that maybe you wouldn't get through traditional mailers and things like that the city puts in their utility bills, because everybody doesn't get those. So I think that's something we really could improve on, and I think maybe reviving the Multicultural Advisory Committee to maybe give them a little bit different direction could be helpful too.
Thank you, Ms. Wicks. Mr. Hyer.
Multiculturalism is something that probably is not very well understood, maybe even by me. However, our country was made great by people coming here from other cultures. And people continue to immigrate to the United States for the opportunity that it provides. We can learn a lot from people who bring their culture here and translate their culture into success, into a success story as they are residents around us. When the Planning Commission and the City Council do community plans, we meet with the citizens all around the city, and even tonight there is going on a public input gathering meeting in the Jefferson community. There are many of those residents that don't speak any English, and so we do need to accommodate for those citizens to make sure that we know what they want, what's important to them that is provided from the city. How do we structure their community? What amenities are important for them? And because of several of these community plans that I've been a part of, I've I've recognized and appreciate the different cultures that are representative of our community, and they just make us stronger. So I think it's important that we continue to invite them and provide for their well-being in our great city.
Thank you, Mr. Hyer. Ms. Neal?
Thank you. Diversity seems to be fitting in pretty well all over the city, and for awareness and sharing, we do have several cultural festivals that happen on a regular basis. There's the Greek Festival, the Taste of Ogden. Just recently was the Obon Festival down at the Buddhist Church. And Juneteenth, just to name a few, creating a welcome atmosphere toward cultural groups and encouraging bigger promotion can only add to the many different things there are to do and the people, a diversity of people there are to meet in Ogden. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Mr. Thompson?
Excuse me. First off, I think the Multicultural Committee and the multicultural community needs to be more assertive right now. I think that everybody is open to input from these communities and would like to have their input to make educated decisions and choices for them in the cases where we have to, through city ordinance and that sort of thing. I think it's very important that we keep the door open to them. I think we need to keep the door open to all ethnic origins. It's not just restaurants around town. These are real people that we need to deal with, and we need to deal with very, very carefully. Make sure that they're receiving the benefits that they are entitled to. But an open door, open phone policy for these folks, and encouragement to get them involved. I think a lot of them are hesitant to get involved because of their lack of communication skills within the community. And I think if we encourage them and get them involved in the process, I think the city would be better off for it.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next question, Mr. Hyer. As a council member, how do you propose to capture the unique cultural spirit, different ethnic groups in our neighborhoods and capitalize on this asset?
Boy, I should have saved the last answer for this one. Certainly, we need to talk to the people that live here to find out what is important, what is going to make our community better for them. As we all mesh together, it makes us all better. So as we continue to work on those plans and to update our general plan to include the things that we learn in those circumstances where we meet with the people. That is something that I strongly want to do as a city council person, is to go out into the community and to meet with the people about issues that are of a concern to them, and bring those ideas back and translate them into our general plan to fix the many little things that are a nuisance to our citizens, and to make our community more friendly to live in, and make people have a little more community pride, so that they'll continue to build the community the way we'd like to see it.
Mr. Hyer, Ms. Neal.
Thank you. One of the main ideas that I wanted to focus on as a council member would be to focus on the city on a micro level, which would be with the individual neighborhoods and, of course, the diversity in those neighborhoods. And one of the ways I think I can get involved on a personal basis as a council person would be to attend some of these events get to know the people of the cultural backgrounds and talk with them and let them know that I have an open door policy as a member of the City Council.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Mr. Thompson?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. As a council member, how do you propose to capture the unique cultural spirit, different ethnic groups in our neighborhoods, and capitalize on this asset?
I think capturing the spirit and understanding what's going on with the different cultural groups is very important. I believe that it's something that is struggled with in major cities like New York City and Los Angeles. I think it would be important for myself as a councilman to try to get answers from some of these major cities on them sort of issues, figure out, what they're doing to make things work in their multicultural issues, and then participate with the different ethnic groups throughout the community. Get to know what they're about. My family is, my brothers and sisters are half American Indian. Getting to know their culture was eye-opening for me, and I believe getting to know the other cultures throughout the city would be an eye-opener for myself and anybody else that was willing to participate in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Ms. Wicks?
Thank you. We all are Ogden, and diverse and vibrant communities and, neighborhoods will make Ogden a community of choice. And we're not large enough to have a Chinatown or a Little Italy or something like that, but I think there can be a lot more done to foster appreciation of the various ethnic groups that we have in our community. Ogden is probably one of the most ethnically diverse communities in the state, and I think that's part of what makes it a great place to live. And, we've always had diverse groups, and I think working to foster appreciation for that would go a long way. So how you capture that, I think we do have a lot of events where maybe we could help make them better publicized and better attended and have more diverse participation. I go to things like the Greek festival, and I'm not Greek, but I love Greek culture and Greek food. Juneteenth is another thing where you have an opportunity to learn a lot about the people who live here, and I think even just simple things like promoting those types of things in the water bill so that you have a broader reach will help improve knowledge of those things going on. I think a lot of times people just don't know those things are going on in the community, and if they did, it would be a great opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Neal? What should the City Council do, if anything, to make Ogden's neighborhoods more friendly to pedestrians?
Boy. That's an interesting question because I was involved in an auto pedestrian accident just after the primary election. I think infrastructure is real important. Infrastructure, we need to keep sidewalks, curb and gutter, crosswalks, crossing lanes visible. Maybe try the flags at crosswalks like they did in Salt Lake City. For one, I think if I had one of those flags, I would have been visible to the lady that had the van in between us at the time I was crossing the street, and I wouldn't be in this condition. Investment in infrastructure is certainly a good investment for the long run of the city. Would create jobs and maintaining attractive and accessible pedestrian atmosphere throughout the city, and it would be good to make sure that it is safe with adequate timing at the lights and so forth. And this should include downtown as well as in residential areas. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer. I think the sidewalks in Ogden City are terrible. I've walked nearly every neighborhood in Ogden during my lifetime and in the last few weeks, and sidewalks are in appalling condition. In some areas, they are not wheelchair accessible. A person in a wheelchair couldn't possibly get down a sidewalk. So I think infrastructure, as far as the sidewalks are concerned, is extremely important to improve conditions for pedestrians and foot traffic within our city. But I also believe that we have a problem with crime to pedestrians, and it's something that a lot of people aren't talking about. But in central Ogden City, the pedestrians face some perils when they're walking the streets, and I think it is important that we increase a police presence and make our sidewalks and our citizens safe as they walk through our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wicks?
Thank you. I think we need to look at it maybe even just beyond just sidewalks for pedestrians, but also bike lanes too, so that we're addressing all the possible modes of travel through our community. We have a limited budget for sidewalks every year. You can only address so much, and we try to do the best we can with the resources that we have. And I agree that the sidewalks are in bad condition in a lot of areas, and it is difficult for people who are in wheelchairs to get around, or even walking. If you have a big discrepancy between the two pieces of concrete that make up the sidewalk, you can trip, and that's dangerous to everybody. I think we need to look at complete streets. I've requested that the planning department look at coming up with a bicycle master plan. We're waiting for that. I think that's also something that kind of helps address things for pedestrians too, because when you make the streets or sidewalks, make our communities friendly to have people get around outside of a motor vehicle, you're putting more eyes and ears on the streets. That makes it friendlier to pedestrians. I think we can improve a lot with our bike lanes too. They don't always get swept. That's a safety hazard. You sometimes have cars parked in the middle of them. I think we just need to approach it from the standpoint of looking at bicyclists, pedestrians, making sure that people with disabilities can get around too.
Hyer.
Thank you. We have looked at many ways to make our streets and our communities a little bit more pedestrian friendly. One of the things that does show a lot of promise is bulb outs at intersections, so that it narrows the travel lane, constrains it, and causes the driver to know that he's doing something. He's entering an area that he needs to be more cautious. So bulb outs are they do cost a little bit of money, but I think overall it's a good solution to create a little safer condition. Different road surfaces for color and texture at intersections are also a change that a driver will notice and say, oh, I'm at an intersection. I'm at a place where pedestrians may be found, and it causes them to raise their awareness. Sidewalks, of course, around the city, it's ADA ordinance now. We've got to get around and make sure that's all done so that wheelchairs and wheeled vehicles like that will help people to cross streets. I am a fan of the flags. Whenever I go to Salt Lake, I am a flag holder. I make sure I take those things across the street with me. Maybe we ought to get you one and have it in your purse, Jennifer. That might be good. But anyway, in our downtown, particularly along Washington Boulevard, I think there's a lot that we can do to make that a pedestrian environment rather than a highway. We've got such a treasure down Washington Boulevard that could be one of those real regional draws to our community. So to do the cross section, I guess I'll quit. Thank you,
Mr. Hyer.
Lots of ideas, though.
Yeah. We just get started and the
Yep.
time is gone. All right, Mr. Thompson. Would you be open to discussing ways that opportunities might be afforded to individuals who are trying to rehabilitate their lives through treatment without compromising the success, integrity, and benefits of the Good Landlord program structure? If so, what would need to be done to create opportunities of change?
I would say that yes, I would be open to revisiting the Good Landlord program. One way that I've thought of as I pondered on this question was that perhaps we should form a panel of landlords, Ogden City landlords, not absentee, but Ogden City landlords, to review applications that have been denied and make some recommendations that perhaps may benefit somebody that is truly trying to improve their lives. The biggest problem with it is the success of the program's been very obvious. 90% of the landlords in Ogden City participate in it. There's been a 30% reduction of crime rate within the properties that do participate in the Good Landlord program. And so based on the success of the program, it's very difficult. But I have heard of abuses to the program. I've heard of people being denied housing based on the Good Landlord program when they shouldn't have been denied for minor infractions of the law, and the landlords are citing the Good Landlord program, and that's inappropriate for them to do that. But I think ultimately the decision should be up to the landlord whether he rents to somebody who is a convicted felon or not. Thank you.
Ms. Wicks?
Thank you. I think it is worth looking at the ordinance. I've talked to somebody who was involved with founding the drug court program and heard some concern about people who are making their lives better, who haven't gone back to what landed them in the program in the first place, who are truly trying to make their lives better, yet they're unable to have good quality housing because of the program. They're left in substandard housing with landlords who don't participate in the program, and maybe they're being put into an environment with others who maybe are not keeping out of trouble, and it makes it difficult. I think it is worth looking at maybe finding a way to give people who are staying out of trouble, who have decided to change their life, a chance to live in our community and be able to have quality housing from people participating in the Good Landlord program. And I think that maybe allowing them that chance should be something that can be left up to the landlord if we come up with some guidelines that find a way to screen those people and come up with a way to figure out how to allow them to become good members of society.
Mr. Hyer.
Certainly everything can be reviewed and looked at. We've talked a lot about our diverse community tonight, and I think that diversity does make a community better, but I don't think diversity means we have the right amount of criminals in our city. The Good Landlord program is successful, partly because of the way it does execute the restriction on those who have committed felonies. It only restricts them as long as until they're through their probationary period. that is appropriate in as much as the statistics state that 80% of felons reoffend. I would like to know if they're part of the 20 or part of the 80 before I let them live in a home that I rent. And so therefore, I'm a big fan of the Good Landlord program and the way it is currently executed. As I've talked with others who have participated, I'm not a landlord, but I have friends and acquaintances who are. And as they've gone through the Good Landlord program, being a little bit complicated to get through the program, sometimes it's hard to meet schedules. But without exception, they have all come out of those programs being a big fan of the program, of the Good Landlord program as it sits, because it gives them plenty of tools to make sure that they are a good landlord and that they can screen their tenants to where they have a viable renter that is going to be a good neighbor and going to be a good contributor to the neighborhood and to society. I personally think that the Good Landlord program is pretty good the way it is. Certainly, I'm always open to looking at things that might make something better, but currently, I don't see a big reason to change it.
Ms. Neal?
Yes, I've looked into the Good Landlord program, and after reading through it, realized the main premise of it is to, in fact, lower the amount of illegal activity in areas where there are rentals, either apartment buildings or a block of housing or whatever. And I think looking at the ordinance and weighing in what might be interpreted as illegal activity, if you have somebody that's on probation or is going through a drug treatment program, it's pretty easy to find out if they're following the rules of their probation or their treatment program through their probation officer or their caseworker. That could be something that could be worked into the rental agreement. And so then they could live there without having to worry about living in a place where the landlord doesn't care who lives there and they're living next door to someone else who's on probation, which is in itself a violation of their probation. They can't, they're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place in that situation. And I think since the city's already collaborated with other nonprofit organizations to support local programs that assist with counseling, treatment, and rehabilitation programs, that the Good Landlord program can be added into this loop and work something out that works for all parties. If they're sticking to their probation and following their treatment, they're not participating in illegal activity. And the police that come by periodically to check on them can also stop by the manager and let them know, that things are well with this tenant. Thank you.
Next question. Ms. Wicks? Small business was the economic engine of the 90s. What will you do to recruit new business and jobs to our community?
We've, on the time I've been on the council, we've done a lot to recruit businesses here. I think we have some real success stories. We've retained some businesses that have been able to expand and offer good-paying jobs for Ogden residents. And I think it's important to look at the quality of jobs being provided. If we're going to spend the time courting a business and offering them some sort of incentive to come here, I think we really need to make sure that the jobs that they will be providing are jobs that will truly benefit those in our community and that, won't have a negative impact on existing small businesses. I still believe that small businesses in our community are the economic engine of our community. They have roots here. They don't pick up and move the next time some other community offers them an incentive to locate there. And I've been involved with Local First Ogden activities to help try to educate people on the benefits of supporting small businesses because they truly are the lifeblood of our community. I think finding ways to help them grow is also important so that they can hire more employees, because they really are involved in our community and what goes on, and they stick around. We've had some luck with getting some of the outdoor recreation companies to come. I don't know if there's a whole lot of more opportunity there with getting people to move here, but I think we have a strong core of businesses like that, and maybe getting some of the other supporting businesses tied to that to come here would be a good way to move forward.
Mr. Hyer.
Our community is very unique. We do have much to offer businesses and employees that choose to come to Ogden. There's plenty to do. There's lots of recreational activities. We have entertainment. We have good places to eat. To continue to recruit people or to recruit business, we need to make sure that our ordinances are business friendly, make sure that there is certainly the right kinds of ordinances so that we get what we need, but not so many that a business is just burdened by jumping through a lot of hoops over and over again. We need to continue to go out and solicit and offer incentives. The acquisition of the BDO several years ago was a wonderful thing for Ogden because it allows us to have things other than just minimum wage jobs. We can have some higher paying jobs in the BDO. To provide incentives for businesses to come to BDO. Some will certainly bring their employees with them, and some will hire people that are local. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg kind of a thing. We need to make sure we have educated people to take the jobs that are offered in high tech, but we also need to have the jobs for the people to want to become educated, and so it's a kind of a growth process that both have to happen. One of the things that I think Ogden could benefit from, which is something my wife and our family has tried to promote, a word of mouth amongst ourselves, is to make sure we buy in Ogden. If we have to go to the store, we're going to go to one that's in Ogden City. We live out in the north end of town. It's probably closer to go to North Ogden, but we choose to buy in Ogden, and Ogden could benefit from that kind of an advertising program.
Thank you. Ms. Neal?
Thank you. We do have a community economic development department, and I recently spoke with a gentleman in that office. We had a nice conversation. He said that presently they're really getting aggressive in recruiting more technical related and engineering type jobs and businesses rather than retail. And they're also working with Weber State that has a program up there called USTAR, which is Utah Science, Technology, and Research. It's actually based at the University of Utah and Utah State, and they have a smaller base at Weber State that works with the research teams and so forth at the university, and to kind of mesh with the community and reach out to new technology and businesses that might be interested in the research that's going on, to bring them to town, to be in touch with the university. And also that will help the students graduating in those fields from the university be able to stay here and have something, that will be there to give them a nice job in what they were studying. And as a council member, I will fully stand behind this department's work and support them in any way I can. And I'll also try to stay on top of the infrastructure, which is an important thing. We have to have good infrastructure in order to attract the businesses. The infrastructure needs to be in place. That's all.
Thompson?
Yeah, small businesses are kind of dying, and I blame that on places like Walmart. Maybe I'm wrong for bringing up Walmart, but I can't help but do it. The problem with small businesses are we as a society have taxed small business out of business. The federal government taxes a small business to the point where basically they make about half of what they actually bring in or less. Then you have a problem within Weber County, and I believe this is statewide, but I'm not sure. I didn't check into it. But Weber County charges a small business tax every year annually for equipment, and it's about 1%. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you've got a $200,000 or $300,000 worth of equipment, it is a lot of money. So I think to promote small businesses in the city of Ogden, the first thing we need to do is we need to work within the legislative process within our state, our county, and in the local city to reduce the cost of taxes to small and startup businesses. I also believe that we need to streamline the process for business licenses and get these folks in business, and let's not put them out of business through our own taxation. Thank you.
Next question, Mr. Hyer. What are your views on historic preservation in Ogden? And what measures would you take to strengthen the preserving and saving of historic homes and buildings? Also, what thoughts do you have on demolition by neglect, setting up emergency funds for preservation, and establishing significant buildings in East Central on the local register?
You know, since I got this question previewed to me, I've done a lot of thinking about historic preservation. There often does become a real conflict between preserving a historic structure and business development or some kind of a development. We run into that a lot, and there's no easy answers to that particular question. There needs to be an assessment of historic relevance. Just because a building is old doesn't make it historically relevant. There is an aspect to that of location. Certainly in the East Central, where there are those historic districts, they are very relevant, and they do need to be. We need to go to great lengths to make sure that we preserve those gems of our city that have been around for a long time. There are some old and some would argue historic buildings in other parts of our community that don't lend themselves to being very relevant, and it's difficult to say if they meet the standard or don't. It seems to me that there ought to be, and probably is, a group of people with money that want to save these buildings. I know that they're certainly worth saving, and that this demolition by neglect ought to be able to draw on some of those people and those funds to rescue and resurrect these buildings that are historically relevant, and nobody would argue, but they just need some money that the current property owner doesn't have to give it. So that's probably a solution that should be looked into.
Thank you. Ms. Neal.
Thank you. I think historic preservation is important. I think the city should keep a healthy and ongoing relationship with the historic preservation groups on the state and local level that we already have that handle some of these issues. And I will certainly, as a council member, seek and heed their advice. When it comes to historic preservation, such as in neighborhoods or districts within the downtown area, and versus economic development, I feel that historic preservation should take priority, and a compromise should be sought towards development that follows the guidelines laid out for the historic development, districts on a case-by-case basis. Now, as far as the demolition by neglect, We have in Ogden City a neighborhood revitalization strategy program, and it covers, there's a section in there that covers a demolition by neglect situation where there is a dilapidated building in a targeted area, and if it is eligible, the area is eligible, the property owner can receive a 0% loan for demolition and improvement of the property. As far as setting up emergency funds for preservation, historic districts or not, I think that would depend on our budget flexibility and other items on the appropriation agenda.
Mr. Thompson?
All great societies preserve the historical structures, and Ogdenites shouldn't be any different. We need to work to preserve everything that we have, everything that we can within reason of historical significance within our community. Ogden City currently has a program that is applicable to some of the old Victorian homes in Ogden, whereas the city pays a monetary reward to a property owner who purchases or owns that property to reconvert it into a single-family dwelling. That program comes up short on many fronts. I've done quite a bit of research on it. It just doesn't cover the financial cost, or not that it should cover it at all, but it needs to make sense for the property owner and for the city. And right now it makes sense for neither party. So I would want to revisit that particular issue and see if there's something we could do as a city to bring that up to speed. As far as demolition by neglect, to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't know what it meant. Okay, but I've been enlightened by Mr. Cook. And I believe I would support a program that you know, we have a current council member running some proposals on that, and I believe I would support demolition by neglect proposals. Thank you.
Ms. Wicks?
Thank you. You know, historic buildings are what make our community unique. And they do come with their own set of challenges. And I think with a lot of them, we're at a point where something has to be done or the building's going to come down. And I know that we have an effort from Councilmember Van Hoosier to work on a demolition by neglect ordinance. And I am supportive of moving forward and looking at that, because we just can't allow these buildings to languish. They have a negative impact on the communities where they're located when they look like that, and we need to come up with some sort of solution to address that. As far as providing emergency funds for preservation, I think it is important to try to find a way to come up with some money for that. We've had a couple buildings come down because we didn't have any sort of solution to help deal with that. And, once they're gone, they're gone. And I think it's important to preserve those things. As far as working on getting homes in East Central Ogden on the historic register, I think we've had some great successes with the Eccles Historic District and the Jefferson Historic District, and you see the amount of investment of private as well as public dollars that have gone into those areas, and I think the neighborhoods surrounding them have improved too, and it makes people take pride in their neighborhood. So I would be supportive of working on getting homes on the register. Working with citizens too, because you do have some stipulations that make it a little bit difficult.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, right now it is 9 minutes after. With my calculations, 3-minute closing statements, that's about 12 minutes, so I'm wondering if we have time for one question. Let's see where we are at the end of that. See if we can squeeze in another one possibly. All right, Ms. Neal, this is your question to begin. When a project in an historic district such as 25th Street begins, but then stops and is not completed and becomes an eyesore that impacts all of the other properties in the district, what can or should the city do about it?
Thank you, and that is a very good question. I would like to broaden that to cover the whole city rather than just historic 25th Street.
Would you please answer the question, ma'am?
Yes, I will. Including the business district, historic districts, and residential districts, code enforcement needs to be looked at and enforced. No favoritism, quid pro quo, or excuses for leaving properties undilapidated or other conditions that violate code enforcement. Some properties go far too long in abandoned and overgrown condition with nothing being done by the city, it seems, to enforce the code violations. And I think this has to stop. The city needs to work with each property owner fairly and without prejudice to see that the city values are not compromised.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Yes, I believe that these properties that are on 25th Street, I think most people know which properties they are. It's pretty hard to miss. The folks that own them properties should be treated just like any other absentee landlord. They should be issued paperwork from the code enforcement folks to get them up to speed. If they fail to do that, and it's obvious that it's failing on 25th Street, the city would need to, I wouldn't be opposed to the city sponsoring some type of enforcement, or even at extreme cases when the landlord or owner of the building, I should say, is totally unreasonable and not working on his property. It's time for the city to take some kind of legal action or do something to get that up to speed. These properties on 25th Street that are an eyesore need to be dealt with, and they need to be dealt with swiftly. Thank you.
Thank you. I think code enforcement needs to be fair and enforced universally. I think when you have a project languish, it compromises the viability of the surrounding properties. And, turning a building into a pigeon farm doesn't help the neighborhood, whether it's on 25th Street or anywhere else. So I think, we do need to look at increased code enforcement for things like that. I also think that's perhaps where the demolition by neglect ordinance could come in and help solve some of those problems.
Mr. Hyer.
Current ordinance, other than just enforcing about the looks of the building, aren't going to keep those buildings in good shape. So the ordinance will need to be changed in order to allow the city to do anything of a substantive nature about those buildings on 25th Street. But rather than to just carry around a big stick and beat up the property owners that find themselves with a building that is very expensive to rehabilitate, there also needs to be offered some resources that they can draw upon to allow them and to give them incentive to rehabilitate those buildings and to use them to make those gems sparkle again. Those are some of the things that really make our community great. And but rather than, we just need to make sure that we aren't a big bully in the city, but we offer something that will be beneficial. Down 25th Street and along Washington, those old buildings are very unique. They're unique in our state. They're unique in the country. There aren't very many that have districts like we do. And to recognize them for what they are and what they can be is going to be very beneficial to us. we do need to find a pot of gold to help to rehabilitate those. They're very expensive to rehabilitate, and sometimes the landowners can't afford to do it. So unless we can provide help for them, I think we're going to continue with the problem that we do. Even if we do continue to find them until they don't own them any longer, then the city finds themselves with it, and they still need to come up with the money to rehabilitate them. It's going to take money.
Hyer. As I look at the clock, we have enough time for our closing statements. And following the procedure that we have been with the questions, Mr. Thompson, we will let you give your 3-minute closing statement, please.
I am asking the citizens of Ogden City to vote for Stephen Thompson for Ogden City Council because I believe that I can make a difference. I believe it with all my heart. I've toured Fire Station number 3, and I've seen the appalling conditions that our firefighters are forced to live in with lead paint peeling above their heads where they sleep. I've done some research into essential city services and found out that forestry takes care of approximately 30,000 trees with only 2 full-time employees, and that our water system is a disaster waiting to happen. I've walked nearly every neighborhood in Ogden. I've seen the conditions of the sidewalks. I find all of this unacceptable. I grew up in Ogden, raised my children in Ogden, and now my grandchildren are growing up in Ogden. I want a better place for them to live. I made a promise to the citizens to work hard at representing the views of the citizens, to do the best job I can, and always be a watchdog over taxpayers' monies, and never randomly raise the cost of Ogden City services. These are promises that I have absolutely no problem keeping. I further believe that I'm a good choice to end the rift in city government. I want to just ask everybody to please vote November 8th. Thank you.
Wicks.
Thank you. I think there's tremendous potential with Ogden, and I think we've barely just scratched the surface with that. We've had some challenges with some of the projects we've been working on because of the economy, and I think that's something we're going to struggle with in the future. But I have the enthusiasm and knowledge to try to move those things forward. I'm responsive to citizens and truly take their concerns to heart. I've worked hard to foster a stable, diverse, and vibrant community. And during my time on the City Council, I've helped to increase transparency and citizen access to what's going on. People know what we're doing, why we're doing that, and they're provided with the same information we are that we're making our decisions on, and I think that's a good thing. I think it is time to put more focus into the things the city needs to focus on that contribute to quality of life. We talk a lot about economic development, and I think a lot of times things like infrastructure get neglected. I've worked hard to try to push upgrading our water and sewer systems so that they're reliable and will serve us well for years to come. There were some hard decisions made there. We had to increase people's rates. I think that's something we still need to look at. And I think that it's vital that we focus on some of the essential services like public safety as well. We have a hard time retaining quality employees. They get trained here and they get offered more money and they leave. They're our biggest asset, and I have supported the city employees the whole way. I think supporting quality growth, citizen involvement, and things like that all contribute to quality of life. And I am the biggest supporter of that. I'd like to ask the citizens of Ogden to vote for me in November. Thank you.
Mr. Hyer.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate having the opportunity to be here tonight and to express my views and to hear the views of other candidates. I have the utmost respect for my opponent as well as those that are running for the other position. Ogden is a great place to live. I have grown to love it through my 50-something years. I'll keep it at something so you don't know exactly how old I am. But as I have been to 6 different APA conferences around the country, in Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., Louisiana, San Diego, there are unique things that we learned in each of those places that have application to Ogden that we can put here, and that will make Ogden even better than it already is. As I've talked with the citizens, as I've gone around and campaigned, there are a bunch of little things that need to be fixed to make our citizenry a little happier to be here. And they're not hard to fix. I think we just need to pay a little attention and to make some adjustments to our ordinance to make sure that our ordinances are serving the people and not that our people are serving the government. I'm a big proponent of property owner rights, and for people to have the government serve them, not the other way around. I have the skills and the desire to build a consensus. As the Planning Commission, we got to watch the City Council and the Mayor's administration bicker over these past several years, and it was very frustrating because it seemed like to us that the answers were fairly clear, and that it was just politics in many cases that seemed to stop progress. I am not a politician, and I'm just a regular citizen. I want to be the representative of the everyday man in Municipal Ward 2. I have an open door policy and a listening ear, and I desire to know what we can do as a city government to better serve the community, the people that live in our communities, and to make it a better place for all, and to make it desirable for people to want to come here with their businesses, their employees, and to live and work here in Ogden.
Ms. Neal?
Thank you. I too greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here in this room today. The support that I got through the primary election that got me here from the voters. I want to say that I want to serve on the City Council for a number of reasons. First, I'll say I will have an open door policy for anyone with an issue to discuss. If I don't have an answer, I will get one. I will focus on our city at the micro rather than the macro level, make sure that our citizens are taken care of. And since I will be representing Municipal Ward 2, those will be my citizens of focus, but also the entire city. Also to make sure the infrastructure becomes and remains solid for the good of all. I want to focus on the promotion of locally owned businesses and also new business, but not at the expense of our hometown business owners. Education is a real priority with me. I have a child in the Ogden City school system. I will do all I can to ensure that what comes out of city government does not impact our schools in any negative way. I believe also that our historic and open spaces should be preserved because of the attraction they bring to people from outside of Ogden. I was raised in a military family. Before I moved to the Ogden area, I never spent more than 1 year in the same school growing up until I moved here. And I had a father that expected the best out of me and my younger sister. And so whenever I am given a task or an opportunity to do something for someone, I view that as an opportunity to do my best. So as a city council member, above all, I will do my best, my very best, to serve Ogden to the best of my abilities, and I will do my best to learn what I need to do the job right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your positions with the citizens of Ogden this evening. The general election will be held Tuesday, November 8th. If you have questions about where to vote, please contact the City Recorder's Office at 801-629-8150 or visit the Ogden City website at www.ogdencity.com. Good evening.
Thank you.